The hat is becoming this thing that actually, that little nod is like, I know what you're going through. And so I just found a lot of comfort in that group chat. And now there's a lot of people showing a lot of comfort in this VIP group. And the community of being a dad is necessary.
Hey, what's up? I'm Benjamin Gottlieb, back with Shopify Masters, your companion for starting and building a business. Building community is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, but what does it take to truly build a community completely online? Our guests today are longtime friends who have been trying different business ideas out for years, and they say community and word-of-mouth marketing is what made their current brand stick. Bart Szaniewski, Grant Eastey, and Ejay O'Donnell are co-founders of Dad Gang. It's a hat company that has sold more than 250,000 hats in just 2 years. Gentlemen, welcome to Shopify Masters.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Stoked to be here.
Absolutely. We got 3 guests today, and I can't wait to get into it. First of all, Grant, why hats of all things?
Oh man, I feel like hats are just, it's a nice staple. When you put it on, it's really a statement that you have. If you're going to an NFL game and let's say your favorite team's the Seahawks, you're putting a hat on your head and you're letting them know, I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm showing up. So we wanted to find a product that was simple, but was very high quality and that meant something. And so when you put a hat on, you're really making a statement. And we felt like this was one of the strongest statements fathers can make.
Absolutely. I mean, not just with hats, but any piece of clothing, whenever there's a logo there, you're right, you are making a certain type of statement. Bart, what statement is Dad Gang making with these hats?
Yeah, there's a lot of statements behind Dad Gang, but the main one is it kind of derives from our story of being a dad and living it day in and day out and living it in between the good and the bad and all the things that happen to us on a daily basis, whether it's, you're struggling at work or you're not getting any sleep or you are celebrating a birthday or something joyous, you can always relate to each other through the term Dad Gang. And if you see another dad with a Dad Gang hat, you can easily, just recognize each other, give each other a head nod. And one of the main reasons we chose that word too is because dads across social media always get a ton of the funny stuff. You get lawn mowing jokes, you get New Balance sneakers, you get just goofy stuff, dumb dads.
You're describing my life in wardrobe, by the way.
It's a universal term for fatherhood. It doesn't have to be funny. You can be going through something serious or hilarious, and it just sticks, and it's simple. And I think if you're a dad, you're automatically in Dad Gang. So it just made sense to throw on the front. And we have different variations now, but Dad Gang is the core of it.
Well, there are 4 fathers here in this interview, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that just like motherhood, let's make sure we're not, forgetting about motherhood. Fatherhood has been changing a lot, especially in the last few decades. Expectations are different. There's a ton of research that has found that fathers today are spending more and more time with their children than in past generations based off of what's happening with how work has changed. Also, the equitability that now exists in many relationships where mother and father are both taking care of children at a more equitable rate. I'm wondering, maybe Ejay can throw this to you. When you think about how fatherhood has changed and how that relates to Dad Gang, is there a connection there that this maybe represents new things with being a dad that didn't exist before?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. I remember hearing this probably way before we even started talking about Dad Gang. Like my dad and his dad had a pretty big gap. They didn't share clothes. There was a big gap there. And then my dad and that gap closed. I mean, my dad was my baseball coach back in the Little League days. My dad had become my role model really quickly. I watched his work ethic and we always spent a lot of time together. And I've noticed even further between me and my kids, I don't have sons, but I have 2 daughters, that we have closed that gap even further. And it's just, we want to be there. We want to be present and be part of their lives. And we understand how important a father is in our kids' lives.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I think any parent, father or mother, or any parent, regardless of how they identify, would say that spending time with their child, especially if you have that time available, it's irreplaceable. Grant, we haven't gotten yet to the idea of Dad Gang Company. It's an incredible idea, but actually creating something from that concept, that's a little bit more difficult. So can you take me through where the idea came from and how you guys turned into a business?
Absolutely. As far as the idea behind it, we have a text thread that we've been in for, over a decade. And, when I first had my son Jackson, Bart, him and I have been best friends for about 15 years. And there was something that whenever I was going through a very long day or a long week on little sleep, where in our text thread we joke a lot. But when we wanted to get the message across, like, hey, like either now is not the day, or hey, I got to go deal with something. I can't talk right now. We would just say, hey, man, I got to rock Dad Gang. And those two words, when we text that, kind of put a pause in whatever the conversation was in the text thread, whether it was lighthearted or whether we were talking sports, or maybe, hey, I might not be able to respond for a while. I'm going to check back in when I can.
Kind of like the safe word or the code word.
100%. Yeah. And that developed into something that was used quite a bit amongst the fathers in the group. And with that, we have "if you know, you know" on the side of the hat, right? The acronym for it. And before Bart had his children, I had my son, and Bart would kind of joke like, "Oh, come on, like it's okay." Or other friends in the group would say, "Oh, come on, man." Like after I'd say Dad Gang, and I'd say, "Hey, man, if you know, you know." Once you're a father, you will understand. You may not understand that exact specific situation, but you will understand the feeling of what you're going through, right?
And I'm sure, Bart, that was pretty annoying at first when you heard that from Grant. If you know, you know, you're like, come on, man.
Oh yeah, as it is to any non-fathers. They're like, dude, just come, or just make it happen. And yeah, you totally do not understand until it does happen. So yeah, that subtle little hit on the side of the hat is a big part of the brand too.
All three of you right now, if you're just listening to our interview, all three of you are wearing different hats, and yet the slogan appears on all the hats. If you know, you know. Bart, if you could pick up the thread there from Grant.
Yeah.
You were talking about how this came to be. So we have this safe word, let's call it, that you guys were talking about. You use this when you were joking around the group chat. I think it's not just men, but women too. If you have a chat, you joke around, and sometimes things might go a little too far. Nice to have some sort of safe word. This was yours. But how did this become a brand?
Yeah, we just kept saying it. And then, so I had worked in apparel and other D2C brands for a while, and just thought, hey, Dad Gang would look cool on a hat. And then Ejay has always been, he's like the head of our operations, but he also designs everything. And so he's got a great design eye. And I was like, hey, Dad Gang would look cool on the front of a hat. Can you design like this vintage cursive Dad Gang logo? And I think I reached out and I was like, here's some examples of like old vintage signs or something like that. Like old like mechanic shops, kind of like vintage type font. And I just blurred out a bunch of words, and then somehow Ejay comes up with this awesome logo. And then we made some hats. It was kind of like, we all love hats. Hats are actually easy to deal with in a sense of a product, because there's no sizes. T-shirts and sweatshirts and other like apparel type products are a little trickier to make. It's a snapback hat, so it fits pretty much everybody besides our big headers, which we make XLs for. But yeah, we just made some hats, made 100 hats, and we did not have any like major business expectations.
So then what was the motivation then? It was just, let's do something fun, and all three of you are working.
Yeah, it was like, let's make some hats, and let's make 100 and see if anybody wants them. And so we all kind of posted across Instagram like, hey, we made some hats and started Dad Gang, right? And through that, we had a bunch of friends and family purchase. And it's exciting. It's sold out in less than 36 hours, but like, it doesn't make you feel like you have a true business by any means. It's just like, okay, I'm looking at the Shopify orders and I know everybody in there. Grant knows somebody, Ejay knows somebody, and then the hats are gone. But then we're like, hey, let's do that again. Let's keep making content around the hats, take some portrait mode photos of the hats and keep going. Very, very simple approach. And so we ordered 300 hats and then made those sell out in less than a week. But then as it kept going, we started noticing more Shopify orders of complete strangers. And we're like, okay, we might have something here. But there's still no outside pressure or inside pressure to be like, all right, guys, we got to build this or else we're going to be stressed. Like, it was just this, oh my gosh, dads love these hats. Let's keep making them. Wives love buying them for their husbands. Like, let's keep going. And that's still the approach today for the most part, really. We don't scale to the moon and all these other terms you hear across D2C. We just kind of keep going and keep trying things.
You're still going, you're trying things, and that has led to some really, really early success. My guests today, Ejay, Bart, Grant, the co-founders of Dad Gang. I'd like to bring up a point here, which is that we have all different types of companies and founders on this program. Folks that are solving problems that they couldn't solve otherwise and have innovated, and also folks who are just doing something that resonates with who they are, who their families are, and maybe just, putting something out there in the world and finding community in that way. I hate to use that word because it really can be pejorative, but in this sense, community is really what you have captured. Ejay, I want to ask you, what is it about the father community, or let's just call it I'm going to take a stab here. I'm going to say late 30s, early 40s dad community is probably maybe your demographic, maybe a little younger. What is it about that community that is so ingratiated by this idea of having a hat like this?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're early 30s or late 40s or whatever. There's just wasn't a crazy amount of support for dads. You know what I mean? Like, there's tons of mother support, which is obviously necessary. But us dads, especially my age group, was taught to not express feelings or communicate. You kind of suppressed and just kind of went through the grind. And as it started to change and this group chat formed, I found a community between Bart and Grant to just talk about this stuff. It's like, oh, I actually have someone that understands what I'm going through and isn't judging me for being vulnerable or anything like that. And it's like, as the brand started to kind of get some momentum, we actually created a Facebook group that was for the VIP dads to join. And it ended up becoming a place where dads could share a lot of things. It became like this support group for dads. And then also too, we added this design by dads to the hats as well, because that's what it is. It's by dads for dads. And so that's all we're trying to do, is rally dad support, really is what it is. And the hat is becoming this thing that actually, like Bart alluded to, is like that little nod. It's like, I know what you're going through. And so I just found a lot of comfort in that group chat. And now there's a lot of people showing a lot of comfort in this VIP group. And the community of being a dad is necessary.
Definitely necessary. No question about it. You rightfully pointed out there are a number of support groups, and we need more for mothers as well. Bart, I really want to get back to that point you brought up earlier about this journey of fatherhood and how you guys scaled. But maybe, Ejay, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were doing all of this fulfillment by yourself in the beginning. Is that right? When the brand was just starting. What was that like? And when did you realize, like, hey, we can't do this anymore. It's getting too big?
Yeah. Originally, so when we got our first batch of hats, Bart took on that responsibility and was shipping out of his garage. So orders came in and he was doing all the fulfillment. And in that process, his wife was pregnant with their second baby. And so they were going to have another child as the business was growing. And so once it got to a point where Bart couldn't, we moved the fulfillment to my house, turned my entire house into a 3PL essentially. And I was so lucky to take it on during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And so, I mean, I was filling my truck. My whole house was just full of boxes.
Is this 2022 or 23?
2022, yep. And
for a visual, he had a pallet of boxes dropped off in his driveway.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a massive stack of pallet of boxes, and that's just for packaging.
That was just packaging and the tape and the printers. I mean, literally building a warehouse out of my living room.
And these boxes, just for visuals, like I think a lot of people look at D2C businesses and they're like, oh yeah, you ship it and you like these boxes show up flat, unfolded, super shrink wrapped with these plastic straps around them, and your hands just feel like cardboard at the end of the day because that's all you're doing is just like folding cardboard, cutting yourself, and then a hat goes into that cardboard. But like that little annoying process of just making the box, I don't know, EJ was doing it during a crazy period of where we were getting like 800 orders a day or something crazy. And then you're like, hey, you doing okay over there? His whole living room's covered in boxes and plastic and
While he has a full-time job, while he has his two kids and his house I think his in-laws came over to help. His wife was helping.
yeah.
And keep in mind, EJ is working, 40 plus hours at his other job. And part of that entails him going to a warehouse that's like 2 hours away. So not only is he traveling and putting in work there, but he's also coming back and printing all these orders. So it was a lot of chaos.
Sounds like we owe a lot to EJ here on the early success.
Yeah.
For that month, yeah, he crushed it.
That was brutal.
Let's get back to this. I mean, the story is great, but let's get back to the success. Bart, the organic growth of the brand really has been remarkable. This is the type of thing that businesses and founders dream of, right? Because if you get addicted to that paid advertising tap, it can be very, very expensive, right? Constantly feeding that pipeline for acquisition of new customers. And yet, for you all, you've leaned into organic. It sounds simpler than it is, but tell me, what advice do you have for other founders who are listening, who want to unlock organic growth?
Yeah, I think you have to really, really strip it down to the basics when you are starting something and ask yourself a couple questions. One, do people want this? I think is like a really, really big question for any product. I think a lot of people like will just sprint to launch a product and forget that basic step.
How do you answer that question?
I think we would answer it in actually seeing a product market fit or a gap into what was already happening. So like we've mentioned a couple of times here, dads were not getting anything that was just standard and cool and you could wear on a daily basis. We were getting funny t-shirts, number one dad shirts, funny mugs, joke stuff. And I was like, man, I love being a dad and I want to represent it on a daily basis. But I have to wear this goofy shirt that says number one dad or, dad bod expert or whatever it is on the front. And so it was like, yeah, the three of us would sit there and be like, yeah, I think I want it. Do you want it? Yeah, Grant, EJ, I want it. I think my buddy would want it. So if you come across something you actually want or need organically, then you will jump on it without needing that crazy hook within an ad or some massive funnel strategy and abandoned cart email and all these things that we still use, don't get me wrong, but I was in agency land and D2C world for over 12 years and same with these guys. And I just kind of got sick of trying to like force products down people's throats that they didn't necessarily want. But if we made a good enough ad, they would purchase it, right? I just didn't want to launch something like that. So trying to find something that people actually want and need, I think is so crucial in breaking through to organic. And then once again, community. Like, can your product create a community? I think Dad Gang clearly does. And I think a lot of other products do too. Represent is one of my favorite brands out of London, and they do a great job of both fitness and fashion and run clubs and hybrid athlete events, all these things. Like, they're amazing at creating community. Gymshark's amazing at creating community. Like, does your brand bring people together? Do they want it? Does it bring them together? I think those two pillars like really, really can create something organic that's not forced.
And that's the key in unlocking organic growth. My guests today, EJ, Bart, and Grant, they are the co-founders of Dad Gang. You can check them out at dadgang.co. Organic growth has been key to your brand's success. What other sort of advice might you have for folks listening who want to replicate that type of success?
Yeah, I would say, take the pressure out of it. Take the pressure out of it. Find a way where when you are looking at what you're doing, don't make it the the means to pay bills immediately. Don't make it something where you're looking at it to make it a success because you need money in a month, or because you have an investment and you have to pay that back in a certain amount of time. Once you kind of remove the pressure from that and you just go with the flow and just wherever it takes you, just keep going every single day, putting a little bit of work. I mean, Bart has posted on our Instagram every single day since day one. Consistency, right? And he's done that with no pressure, no stress. We all had other jobs outside of this, but something that goes missed is we each invested $250 to get the first round of hats. So it's $750 total cash that we invested in the first 100 hats. And that was it. And with that, we said, hey, no matter where this goes, we're going to give it a shot. If people like it, great. If not, we made a cool 100 hats.
Speaking to more of the audience too, a lot of fear and doubt in starting a business is I need so much to get going, right? And with us, like Grant just mentioned, $250 each. That is also an amount of money not everybody can toss up immediately, but I do think that it does take less than you think. I'll sometimes take on calls, and Grant and Ejay does too, with people that are thinking of an idea, right? And then you'll hear them out. Their idea is amazing. It should work. It would work. But then they put up a ton of little barriers in front of themselves, like, how am I going to post? What's the content going to look like? How often should I post? What should I say here? But like, you're just starting, and the beauty of starting is that you are at zero. So whatever you do is just one step forward. So like, I think the hardest part in launching anything is just getting going. And I didn't get going for a while. We all didn't get going on certain things for a while, but then once you kind of like dip your toe into the water, start posting, start talking about your brand, and be proud of your brand, then things start moving. Like our first post is a picture of me holding a hat in portrait mode, and that was like, hats are here. You want one, go get one. Next one, maybe the hat on a counter, and then another picture of 3 hats. Like, don't overthink the social strategy and drown out a lot of like Twitter and advice and all that stuff, because it can get to be too much.
Back to this idea, though, of how you became so successful on Instagram. Bart, this didn't happen overnight. You were just talking about how you started with just photos of yourself, right? Taking pictures of yourself with the hats. What was your strategy behind building that page? Was it simply just posting every day? Is it that easy?
No, I don't think like true, like really technical marketers are going to like this answer whatsoever. But the people just starting out with no experience will love it. It was merely taking our first post, which got the most engagement, our first post of a really well shot portrait mode photo with good lighting, from the sun, not a lighting setup or anything. And we would hit that little boost button on Instagram. And here's the little like flip on it. A lot of people would hit boost for sales, but we would hit boost for profile visits in the beginning. And as long as we were getting more new followers than dollars spent, then we would keep going. And this is like $10 a day, not any kind of budget. It was like, I mean, we each threw in $250. We didn't have any ad spend budget. So it was like, hey, I'm going to try $10 a day, just hitting boost for profile visits, and say we'd get like 25 new followers on Instagram and spent $10. I was like, okay, well, there's more people interested in the brand. Let's do that again and spend 15. Okay, we got 30 followers. And through that, we would even do that when hats were sold out, because I would still post every day when hats were sold out. That wasn't the point of posting and building an audience. Isn't to get a sale every single time. It's to build the audience, right? And so I would do those boosts, get new people in, and then when those hats would be back in stock, because they were sold out, we'd have an entirely new audience of people to potentially purchase. I just kept doing that for a long, long time. I think it was, I don't know if EJ or Grant, you remember, but I think it was like 6-7 months before I actually jumped into ads manager and built full on campaigns.
So you were optimizing for channel growth, not for sales early on.
Yeah.
And clearly that's worked for all of you, for the entire brand. I mean, you've got hundreds of thousands of followers now, and it's been a big part of your success. Speaking of success, Grant, you've done some super cool collabs with professional athletes. I know you guys are Seattle guys. I'm an LA guy. And for me, Mookie Betts is top when it comes to athletes in baseball, plays outfield for the Dodgers. They got him in the infield this season. How did you make that happen? Because I think for many folks, when you hear about a big name celebrity wearing your stuff, that's a huge unlock, right?
It is. I played baseball year round my whole life, and I coach it now for my son, and absolutely just love everything to do with baseball. I've, relocated to Los Angeles with my family about 7.5, 8 years ago. And so, Dodgers have become, my second team. Mariners, I've been a diehard fan. We've had a really rough, last 22 years, but I'm not a bandwagon fan, but I love baseball.
Just 22? I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And so when Mookie started wearing our hats, he saw him and his wife had got him one, and then he had purchased some more, and he had just been organic.
How did he see him? I just want to get back. How did he find out? Organically?
It could be online, could be on people in person. I think he may have seen them online and then had purchased one. And then he started seeing them and recognizing them in person, I believe how it went. And people started recognizing him wearing them. And it ended up coming to where his team and us got together, and they were just at a point where they were saying, we just got to do something with you guys. And we were like, absolutely, we'd love to, And for us, it was a really, really awesome opportunity because he is one of the greatest to ever play the game. And we wanted to make something, around him being a father and what that meant to him. And so the whole idea behind it was not to meet with him and ask about baseball and lean into the baseball aspect, but lean into something where a lot of dads can relate. And so when he originally reached out and or his team reached out and we got together with them, we really wanted to, put something together that if you were a fan of Mookie Betts or not, you're going to be able to relate to it. And so when we built the first hat with him in our first collaboration, we started with a handful of hats and we said, okay, let's see how these do. And they really loved the hats and they were behind the message. And for us, it was a really cool opportunity because we're able to highlight a different part of Mookie that we believe hadn't been seen to the general public. And so it was an awesome opportunity where we were able to come together, figure out something that made sense for their team, made sense for us.
And of course, if you have a brand like you guys do and you can get a celebrity to endorse it or work with you in some way, I got to imagine that's a big unlock, especially for sales. But Ejay, just curious, what material impact do you all see when you have a collab with someone like a Mookie Betts? How is this translated in say your sales numbers?
I mean, it definitely helps increase, obviously, the eyeballs for somebody like Mookie wearing it, tenfolds in that time period of the hat being sold. But it really paints the picture of humanizing athletes too as just fathers, and so it was almost a double. It was like almost, obviously, yeah, we want to sell the hats, but it was also to show that no matter if you're the number one baseballer in the world or you're just a normal dad working your 9 to 5, we're all relating, to fatherhood. And that was the most important part for us, was to make sure that everyone got that message when we were doing that collaboration, because it's more than baseball. It's more than our jobs. It's more than all the things. It's like, we just wanted to highlight fatherhood, and to do it with Mookie was one of the coolest things. And that does, of course, translate to some higher numbers that are obviously great to see, but that was not always the intention behind it, is to put fatherhood at the forefront.
Before we wrap up here, Bart, I would like to ask you, what do you think is next for you three and for Dad Gang?
Yeah, like I said, the common thread of our company is still, let's see what happens. Let's try and make some hats and see what happens, work with some more people. We have some awesome other athlete partnerships coming up. that you'll probably see rolling out within the next couple of months. We'd love to share, just can't at the moment.
Any teasers?
Baseball and boxing, we can say that. But yeah, they're coming out really soon there. We want to, like Ejay, like Grant, like myself said, like drive fatherhood forward and build community around it. And that means we want to, yes, highlight athletes that are great and highlight their fatherhood stories, but just highlight the standard dads that are buying our hats and that maybe aren't mega celebrities, and keep sharing their stories. And then obviously making some great hats along the way. We're working on some flat bill hats right now. We have been toying with the idea of bucket hats here and there. We've been talking about different style of truckers, but I think we want to be known as Dad Gang, a hat company for the most part. That's the product, but the community is much bigger than anything. So keep building that forward. We, like I said before, we don't have any scale to the moon goals. We just want to keep building a fun brand together as three best friends and keep that kind of rhythm going.
Well, just to kind of piggyback off of what Bart said with like the flat bill hats and the bucket hats, those ideas that we're looking to bring to light aren't ours. That's what the community is saying. That's what in the VIP group, there are so many people posting ideas and they're doing their own mock-ups in there. And we're seeing people like and comment, oh, we need this colorway, we want that. And so we're really, when it's designed by dads, it's not just designed by us three. It's designed by what people want. We had no intentions of making a flat bill hat. And now we're making a flat bill hat because people want it. And we want to bring to life what they're proud to wear.
And by the way, if you ever want to make a hat that says you should start a podcast, which many people say to dads who talk a lot, I'm your partner right here. Okay, so you guys let me know when you want to make that, roll that out. I'm happy to slap my my likeness on that. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much, Ejay, Bart, and Grant, co-founders of Dad Gang Company. Thank you for doing this episode of Shopify Masters.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Bart Szaniewski, Ejay O'Donnell, and Grant Eastey, the co-founders of Dad Gang Company. Our show, Shopify Masters, is produced by Megan Coyle and Gogo Zoger. Engineers are Miku Betlam and Matt Schwartz. I'm your managing producer and host, Benjamin Gottlieb. Come join us every Tuesday and Thursday to catch a brand new episode of this program, Shopify Masters. And if you're still listening to our show today, go share this episode with another entrepreneur. Until next time, take care.